Bentley Charles Nally was born the perfect baby, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a blessing to his parents Blake and Stephanie. Sadly, the blessing didn't last long as baby Bentley was stillborn. For the Nallys, it was a time of reflection, a time that they needed support and guidance. But death is an awkward subject that often leaves the listener in a very awkward situation. As the Nallys reached out for grievance guidance, they felt there was very little on offer here in Washington County. So they decided to make a change. And with the death of Bentley came a new lease of life with faces of loss, faces of hope. As someone who has recently suffered the loss of a loved one, I know the importance of being able to reach out and share your emotions with others. It's tough. Welcome to Headline News. Incredibly difficult story to be involved in, and it's even a difficult story to tell, but it's really important to Stephanie that people out there know that there is help available. Firstly, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And thanks for bringing lunch.
Yes, I know.
And he's perfectly happy to be here.
Yes, he is.
2 months old.
Yes.
To clarify that,
yes.
he's 2 months old.
2 months.
Tell us a little bit about your story. The last year of your life has been traumatic without question. And I want to thank you for coming in. It's very brave of you.
Thank you.
And what you're doing is amazing. But let's start back to what started out and as a very healthy pregnancy.
Yes. Well, last October, I gave birth to my son, Bentley. He was stillborn at 38 weeks. I had a typical pregnancy. I had no complications, picture perfect. Every appointment I went to, the doctors were like, "You're young, you're healthy, everything's great." And I had been dilated for a couple weeks, so when I showed up at my 38-week appointment, there was no heartbeat. And I was in complete shock. My husband and I were like, what do you mean there's no heartbeat? I had been feeling fine that day, everything was great. And the doctors weren't really sure what was going on, so they sent me for an ultrasound to confirm there was no heartbeat. They weren't still sure what was going on, so they sent me to the hospital to deliver. I ran a ton of tests, and everything the night before was fine. So they sent me to deliver the next morning. I delivered Bentley. He was stillborn. The cord was wrapped around his neck. And he was 6 pounds, 19 inches. And he was born at 3:54 that afternoon, completely healthy. Just his life was taken by the umbilical cord.
How do you prepare for the weeks, the months that follow that? Because you spent 9 months preparing to welcome this perfect little person into your life, and now suddenly you're leaving the hospital and there's just this huge loss. I mean, where did you turn to?
Well, there's really no way to prepare for that type of loss. I know it really didn't sink in for those initial days. I still, I would have dreams that they were lying to me, that it didn't really happen. But I know in those initial moments, my husband and I, our church family came in immediately. And even though I didn't know why God had done what he did, I didn't understand. I still don't understand why he gave us Bentley and then took Bentley away. But in those moments, that was all I had to cling to, knowing that some reason there was someone, he had a plan for what had happened. So I know our friends and our family and our support systems will guide us through in those days, because those moments, we were just trying to get up each day, put our feet on the ground, and just function. So there really was no plan. There was nothing to prepare us even for what emotions we were going through.
Did you look into the local community to see if there was kind of any support, any grief counseling, any kind of programs that you could attend that may help?
Yeah, we did. When we left the hospital, they went over our discharge instructions, and they had told us about several different places we could go. One of the places was Hospice of Washington County, and they have grief counseling there. They deal with all types of loss. I was kind of hesitant to call them because I knew they deal with end of life. I thought they came and helped us with our grandfather. Why are they going to help me after a loss? I didn't really understand that. And then they also,
it's a very different type of loss.
Yeah, it's very different. So I was like, what are they going to do for us? And then we also were told about labor of love, which is through the hospital. Nurses that work at the hospital kind of help lead that. And it's a support group that meets monthly. So those were the first 2 places. And then, of course, they said, there's behavioral health that you can go to. There's, all different types of counseling if I wanted something different as well.
I think what's so striking about your story is that you looked out there. There wasn't anything that you felt at the time would really help you with this loss. So you decided to take actions into kind of your own hands.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the organization that you've set up.
My husband and I were asked in June of this past year, while I was pregnant with Chase, to start a Faces of Loss, Faces of Hope chapter here in Hagerstown. At the time I was pregnant with Chase, so it was a little stressful to add on, but we just started doing some planning, and just recently we had our first event on October 15th, the day of Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness. And Faces of Loss, Faces of Hope, what we would like to do with it, our whole purpose would be to show support for families, maybe in a different realm versus the typical support group where you sit around and share your stories, but give people an outlet that we can get together and celebrate our babies' lives. Hold events, hold workshops, seminars, resources, that people have that they can come to when their friends and their families are done talking about their loss.
I think one thing that struck me when I read your story, written by Marie Gilbert and featured in the Herald Mail, was you felt very much like the loss was supposed to be hidden. And as somebody who suffered a huge loss myself this year, it really resonated with me. It's kind of, it'll be okay. Are you okay now? You'll get over it. Let's not talk about it. Does it help you to talk about it?
Oh yeah, it definitely helps to talk about it. I know that there's days when my husband and I, we don't talk about it, and those days are very difficult. And we start to we can tell each other's moods change just in those few days we don't talk about it. So I couldn't imagine someone having to not be able to talk about it with people, because I feel like the anger really would set in. You wouldn't have any answers or any outlet to talk about it.
Right. Well, I think what you're doing is fantastic. We're heading towards, I would say, your first big event, which is November 17th.
Yes.
Now, what can we expect to see at that event?
We are having a workshop. We have a local counselor, Will Perks, who's going to be sharing on how to cope through the holidays. Since the holidays are approaching, we wanted to kind of tune in on the big events that people might be going through. This might be their first holiday.
Milestones are the worst.
Yes, they're the hardest to get through. And I know that last year we did have support. We were attending, but I would have liked to have had something where taught us what to expect through the holidays, what we were going to be experiencing, how to get through them. And my biggest thing is keeping our baby's memories alive. So what you can do to help keep your baby's memory alive and so people don't stop talking about it.
Huge thank you to my contributors for today's show. Until next time here on Headline News, cheerio.